I'll never forget the first time Brian Wilson made me see God. It was 1973, and I was sitting in the mostly empty balcony of a second-run movie theater finally watching American Graffiti, the movie everyone in my high school was talking about. I liked the film okay, but it didn't make that much of an impression on me. I couldn't have been less interested in what I derisively thought of, at the time, as the 50s. To me, songs like At the Hop and That'll Be the Day were corny and dull. But at the end of the movie, as the now famous What Happened to Them After Graduation epilogue came on, a song started to play that had a whole different flavor. It woke me right up. If I'm honest about it, what hooked me, the first thing in my life that made me a Brian Wilson believer, was a single chord change, the one that happened on the word house. As in, sitting in my car outside your house, it's hard to talk about music, about the flow of chords and melodies and arrangements when you're talking about a pop song because it can all sound a little technical and abstract. But these mystic combinations of notes are the true heart of what we respond to in music. And Brian Wilson was the transcendent maestro of sonic magic. The title of the Beach Boys' greatest album is Pet Sounds, and Pet Sounds is what Brian built into just about every song he ever wrote. It was those sounds that lifted you into the light. To me, it's far from incidental that Brian Wilson was the first pop musician of the 60s to bring the word God into the equation. It was the first word of the title of God Only Knows, which I would argue is his greatest song, though that title wasn't just an expression that Brian was using. The song's implicit statement was, God only knows what I'd be without you, because it's God who knows what I am when I'm with you. This was not just a love song. It was a prayer. In the last few days, as so many eloquent words have been written about Brian Wilson, I was struck by a line in Chris Willman's beautiful tribute to Brian's 20 greatest songs. Chris wrote, even his most sorrowful songs, and there were plenty of those, for those days when even California couldn't feel the warmth of the sun, had a way of hitting the joy spot in the brain. The joy spot in the brain is a perfect description of the place inside you that receives music. But when music hits that spot and gives you that ping, is joy the essence of it? The totality of it? Harmony creates ecstasy, but I think there's another feeling that's connected to joy, and the word I'd use for that is faith. Brian Wilson created sounds sublime enough to hold on to and believe in. It's not like that's a radical idea. It may sound goofy to say that when I was a teenager watching American Graffiti, I heard God in a chord change, but the truth is that people have always heard God in chord changes. As a composer, Brian drew inspiration from two different traditions. The Beach Boys started out as all-American rock, and rollers and rock, and roll came of age in the Black church. It was a fusion of the blues and gospel, and you'd better believe that that music was designed to stoke your spirit and lift you higher. But Brian also drew from the tradition of Western classical music, which he fused with rock and roll. Classical music reaches back many centuries, but the giant figure who did more than anyone to launch what we think of as the classical canon was Johann Sebastian Bach. Brian wrote a number of songs that were Bach-like, in particular a song that's one of my very favorites, Wonderful, which comes at you on the harpsichord, with such a strange, twisty, winding, chromatic melody that it's like the sound of Brian losing his mind and finding his belief at the same time.